If you own a Whirlpool side-by-side refrigerator and you have an issue with the Icemaker not working and will not respond to commands, I want to show you one possible solution on how to fix it. This specific refrigerator is in a customer's house, and some features are working while others do not. It will not make or dispense ice, but the water valve seems to work and some buttons do not work as well when you press them seemingly. This video deals with a very specific but common failure, and to check if this video repair is right for you, open the door and look down. Do you see this under the door between the freezer door and the fridge? If so, we're going to repair this horrible problem, but it may take a few steps to double check these wires. Though before we tackle this specific fridge, I want to call out some people that are experiencing the same problem, but not in the area that we showed because this is what I had in front of me, but an area behind the refrigerator. Check behind the fridge as well because the repair process as well as the view of the issue is going to be the same. If this area is the problem, follow the steps we're about to do and really make sure that the wires are covered with a loom or tape once you have the fix done. In some cases, you may have to take the door off, and in others you may not to, and this will vary a little bit from model to model. Most of the refrigerator doors on these types of units come off from the bottom hinge being removed, and we need to remove this kick plate as well to do the repair. So to start, I have to empty the freezer and open both doors. Next, there are going to be two screws in the door pointing almost downward that need removed with a Phillips head screwdriver. Once you have these two screws out, you can pull the cover off by flexing the edges of the side to remove it. Once you have that done, there's the plastic harness on the left that holds the problematic situation in place. From here, you have two choices. You can take the door off entirely to handle repairing the harness, which will give you a little bit more room, or you can repair it while it's still on the refrigerator. Due to space limitations in this home, I decided to repair it with the door on. However, you could remove the door and also the harness underneath as well, although it's going to be mangled. The issue though with this situation and setup is that the wire trunk goes into the door and you cannot simply replace the harness. You either have to buy a totally new door or splice the harnesses back together. What I'm going to do now is slowly remove the black wire cover that has failed to protect the wires on the refrigerator door. I carefully remove the black cover not to damage the wires, and once this is done, you can see the horrific reality of what has happened. This is why your refrigerator's ice maker is not working, and it is a very common major issue on many Whirlpool, Kenmore, and Amana refrigerators that are side by sides. I didn't cut, trim, or alter the wires in any way yet. This is what the customer simply had. Of the 8 wires that go to the ice system, 5 are totally destroyed and 1 is nicked. The gray area is part of the culprit I believe that has caused the wires to be cut. Before I begin the fix to the problem, I want to ensure the area causing the wire problem is resolved by taking a pair of side snips and simply cutting this off with the customer's approval. I would suggest opening and closing the door a few times to ensure the right area of reference is taken care of that would have snipped the wires, as it could be slightly different on your refrigerator of choice than what we have right here. You can then move or disconnect water lines and the harness to free up more room, but in my case, I had quite a bit of room up close, so I'm going to go ahead and start doing the repair. And there are multiple ways that you could splice these wires back together. You could bring a soldering iron, use posi taps, butt splicers, Wago connectors, or these heat shrink solder seal wire connectors. In the case of the fix, here's the items I'm going to be using specifically to handle the problem: a hot air gun, soldering helping hands, wire strippers, and then again these heat shrink solder splicers. I'll have a link to the 4 items I used in the description so you can see what I used, and if you use the links, it does help support the channel in these kind of fixes. And I'll be honest, when it comes to splicing wires, there are many very good videos out there that show a better in-depth tutorial than what I can show myself because I am not great at this. This guy could do a much better job explaining than I ever could. At this point, we could continue the repair using a faraway lens in the customer's house, along with some bad angles that I didn't realize happened on camera. So to properly show this repair, I'm going to cut to my tech room for further demonstration. The issue with the repair is that just joining the wires back together is probably going to be a temporary fix. If you want to do it properly, you need to extend the wires by about 3 to 6 inches. For my repair, I used blue splicers on the thicker 14 AWG wires and red 18 to 22 AWG connectors on the smaller ones. You'll need 14 AWG and 18 AWG wires to do exactly that. In my case for the repair, I had an old dryer wire harness that I could use for the customer, but again, as long as it's 14 and 18 AWG, you should be fine. And you'll notice a clear difference in the size of these wires when you are up close. To start with, I'm going to go ahead and put the solder seal wire connection onto my main wire. Once I have that done, I'm going to use the pair of wire cutters to bare about 1/2 inch of wire on both the refrigerator wire side and then the new wire that I'm going to add to the trunk. This is about the depth that you want to see when you put the solder seal wire connector on over the wire close up. If you need to make further area for the bare wire, you want to go ahead and do that because you do have quite a bit of room inside these connectors in which to work with. Next, in order to join the bare wires together, you want to make what is called a Western Union splice. My skills are not that great at this, so this is probably more like a PayPal or CashApp splice to me. But to do that, you're going to cross the wires near the jacketing about 1/3 of the way past the bare wire, then wrap the right side wire over the left side wire and twist that side together. Then you'll do that for the left side wire and wrap it over the right wire. You're going to end up with what you see here roughly. By itself, this splice is so strong, I can pull the wires hard against each other and they will not be able to pull apart. And essentially, this works. That is how you know that you've done a Western Union splice the right way. Then you're going to slide the solder seal wire connector over the bare splice that you made, centering the solder jacket in the middle of the splice. Then you're going to heat up the tubing, and you could do this in a variety of ways. I've seen people use butane torches, lighters, and even hair dryers, but I have a hot air station like what you see here, which is just a really fancy hair dryer that gets a bit warmer. If you're doing this at a refrigerator, you would optimally want something blocking the hot air getting on the floor or wood or other wires so the heat goes simply on the splice. Once ready, you're going to apply the heat evenly on the shrink tubing, but then focus the most heat on the solder in the middle of the unit. It needs quite a bit of direct, hot heat to melt the solder over the wires. Over a few moments, you're going to see the solder begin to bleed into the wiring, creating a glossy look on the wiring to where you can no longer see the individual strands of wire. The wire I'm using in this example is silver colored, but the wiring on the actual refrigerator was copper colored, which made it much easier to confirm that the solder was working into the wires in person. But again, the key is a good initial union splice followed by your crimp or solder of choice. Next, we're going to trim the other side of the middle wire along with the doors side of the Icemaker wiring system. Although this is all being shown away from the door in my studio, I didn't find doing this in person at the customer's house very hard, although it did take some time to do. I normally don't do service calls on appliances personally, but when I got into appliance repair 8 years ago, I did it so I could send my daughter to school, and the principal of the school is the one that actually had this Icemaker that needed fixed. So I really didn't feel like I could say no to Miss Kim because it's the same principal that was there when I made the decision to get into appliance repair. With the second heat shrink solder tube in place, I'm going to run the heat gun again in the exact same manner, and the solder will adhere to the union splice. The first wire is always the hardest because as you're learning something new, it takes a little bit of time, but that's okay. When the splice is done right and it cools down, this step will prevent oxidation and ensure a much longer life on the wiring job that you've just done, so it never has to be done again. When the second splice is on, you've attached one full run of wiring. I have 4 more sets to do like we just had here. One device that can help you, and I want to call out when you do this, you may want to have helping hands that I didn't use on video right here. They're small metal clips attached to a movable base that will let you work your hot air gun around the wires instead of having to hold with one hand and work with the other. And when I was at their house, I used this on pretty much every splice and it helped a lot. Here is a better close-up of the helping hand station in a more dignified area than the customer's home. As you can see here, this is how you'd want to use your heat gun when you're actually working in real life with the tubing. This works far better than trying to have to hold it up to the camera to try to make sure the focus works right. As a reminder, the wiring is going to be 2 different sizes in the field on the Icemaker, and you may have only 1 or 2 sizes of breaks. Many of the wires that were damaged were smaller, between 18 and 20 AWG, I believe. You'll need to use your wire strippers to properly bare these wires, remove the jacket, and apply the splice, and then solder as needed. Usually by your third set of wires, you're going to feel confident in this repair, and it's going to start going faster because you understand how this works. Just keep a steady pace and ensure the splices are done tightly, because if they're going to back out when you pull them, then it's going to end up not being a good connection when you add the solder and shrink tube. Once or twice the wrap was not tight and I had to redo it on and off camera, and it's especially harder to do the wrap on the smaller AWG wires, but over time you'll get this done to where you can heat up and join it with a hot air device, and that stage will actually be a little bit easier because of how fast the solder will adhere to the smaller wires. Over time, you're going to pay more attention to the fix than the camera, and then you're going to have all of the other sets of wires done. The final step, once you have all the wires spliced, which I did off camera, is to have, for example, solid collar heat shrink tubing or a braided split sleeve wire wrap or loom to put and cover over the wires so that there's extra layers of security on the wires with the door. There are many different types of wrappings you can use, and I will include a link to one or two in the description. With the wires spliced and the refrigerator plugged in, you can see that I'm happy to report the Principal's auger now works and can dispense and make ice. There's going to be some cleanup with the wire wrap, but I know it works, and we can optimize how it looks in their house. And I hope this video guided you through the fix as well. I tried to get as good of camera angles as I could on this, but it is a really difficult job to do good camera work on, but I hope I've done it dignity. Although we were fortunate to fix this one, I want to call one final thing out. It's very possible that when the wires were frayed and broke on the refrigerator, it shorted the harness out to the board. So if you believe that the wires have been fully fixed in your work, check the board. It's possible that the board was destroyed or damaged in the process of fraying for the area that handles the Icemaker system, while all the other components are fine. The easiest way to figure this out would be to look at the board visually and inspect the underside of the PCB as well for any sort of burn marks, damage, explosions, or anything like that that would suggest that it pulled too much amperage. As a note, I will have a link in the description for some of the control boards to these WRS3 and WRS5 refrigerators if you needed that board in that unfortunate circumstance. I hope this video helps you out to understand and repair the harness. I've wanted to do this video for a long time, and I'm going to say that I'm not perfect at this, but it did work. I'll continue to work on best practices, and I'll include additional steps in the comments and description if I come up with more things. And I hope that this gets your Icemaker repaired for a very reasonable cost. Have a great day.